Welcome back to Inside the Glass. I am joined on the phone by the voice of the Chicago Steel, Rob Sanderson. But before we get to Rob, I want to go ahead and take a quick time out to thank our sponsor, Uncle Bob's Moving and Storage.
Hey Phantoms fans, do you need some extra space in your home? Do you need to declutter before the snow falls? Well, the friendly folks at Uncle Bob's Self Storage can help. Whether you need short or long-term, residential or commercial storage, Uncle Bob's has the space for you. Uncle Bob's Self Storage scores a hat trick as your storage, moving, and packing experts. Stop into one of our 5 convenient area locations, or for more details, check us out online at UncleBob's.com. That's UncleBob's.com.
And welcome back. And as I said, we are joined on the phone by the voice of the Chicago Steel, Rob Sanderson. Rob, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
I think we're going to have to upgrade you to friend of the program status, Rob. We've had you on here so often.
I'm going for that record, whatever number of appearances. And obviously we got a game between the Steel and the Phantoms this weekend, and certainly curious if there will be more meetings this spring between the two teams as well.
I mean, things are certainly shaping up that way, with the Steel currently sitting in the first place slot in the Eastern Conference and the Phantoms currently sitting in fourth. But, it's been almost 8 weeks since the Phantom have seen the Steel. How have things been going since then?
Well, better than that weekend for the Steel, at least, because that was, when you look back at a really good season for Chicago, that was a tough weekend early February with those 2 regulation losses at home against the Phantoms. But, it's been a little bit of a back and forth season, but you can't complain much with the team, being in first most of the season so far. There have been some injury problems and things like that. Last weekend was a little tough. Team was home Friday night against a fairly depleted Sioux Falls team, was up 3-0, gave up 3 goals in the final 9 minutes or so of the game to allow Sioux Falls to tie it and force overtime. Still picked up the victory that night, but not necessarily a victory that you celebrate too much, I guess, giving up the lead like that. And then the following night, we were in Waterloo on Saturday, and Waterloo's a really good team out west, and so ended up dropping that game on Saturday night by a goal, an empty netter. They scored, and then we came back, scored again in the final 15 seconds or so, but lost 4-3 in Waterloo against a really good Blackhawks team. So, I think the team's been on top of the conference, but I don't see a whole lot of separation between these teams, between the Chicagos and the Youngstowns and Muskegon, and even you see what Green Bay's doing. But, I still think the Steel, like the last time we talked, they're a confident bunch, and, certainly looking forward to what this spring could bring. But, this weekend's going to be very, very tough for Chicago, especially even before we get to Sunday, with games at Dubuque on Friday and at Des Moines on Saturday, and then home against Youngstown on Sunday. Those are 3 teams in playoff position right now. So this could be the most challenging weekend of the season for the Chicago Steel.
And, of course, you mentioned those Dubuque Fighting Saints. They just dropped out of second place and into third. Muskegon leapfrogged them. Muskegon, one of the hottest teams in the Eastern Conference, probably Muskegon and Green Bay, now that Casey Middlestad has rejoined the Gamblers. And, of course, Andrei Svechnikov is just looking like a world beater right now.
He's absolutely one of my favorite players to call. I'm sure you would agree with that. I mean, he's just, for a 16-year-old, he's a monster out there. He's so strong with the puck and smart with a great shot. I think when I look back at recent games in terms of the positives, the Steel picked up a 3-0 shutout of Muskegon back on the 11th at home, and I thought that was a huge victory for this team against a Muskegon team that can be scary. Steel have had their troubles with Muskegon a little bit this season, kind of a back-and-forth season series, and that was a big win. But Muskegon's been climbing. You mentioned, Green Bay, they're putting in work right now, and honestly, none of their remaining games in the regular season are against teams in playoff spots, so I wouldn't be too surprised if they run the table and are trying to get into maybe that fourth and final playoff spot that, Youngstown, Dubuque, even Muskegon might have to be kind of keeping an eye on that to try to hold on to spots in the East, because Green Bay is going to make a run for it for sure.
Yeah, definitely have one eye at least on the rear view mirror. But let's get back to talking about Chicago. How's that Mankato line doing? Still skating together, still causing havoc?
Well, no, not really. Since we last saw the Phantoms, Walker Dewar was traded to Bloomington, and so that was 1/3 of the Mankato line. And actually, the most recent game we saw Jaremko and Lutz on different lines as well. So the Mankato line was very productive early in the year. For the most part, we've still seen Lutz and Jaremko together. And they just bring tremendous chemistry. I mean, long time best friends since they were kids and know where each other are going to be on the ice. But the lines have been a little bit mixed up as of late. So might be a little bit of a different look to the Steel come this meeting. And obviously, some moves at the deadline as well. And affiliates coming in. We got Jason O'Neill in as a center, a great two-way center in from Sioux Falls. Blake McLaughlin has rejoined the team after winning a state championship with Grand Rapids in Minnesota. So a couple of pieces. Riley Walsh is back on the blue line, a really offensive-minded defenseman who can be dangerous, not afraid to join the rush, start the rush. And then we also got in Ben Mirages in that trade for Walker Dewar to kind of fill a little bit of a void on the blue line after Matt Kierstead suffered a season-ending injury. So it's a little bit of a different look to the Steel, but you've seen a lot of production up front. I think especially chemistry that we've seen out there between Jack Bedini and Mark Johnstone out on the ice, and they were with Lutz on Saturday night in Waterloo. And they're a couple of guys you got to keep a watch on. Certainly the Phantoms players, I'm sure, are expecting that. And Bedini specifically has just been having a tremendous season. He's up now to 27 goals on the year after putting up 4 last year with Lincoln. I mean, his improvement this year has just been unbelievable to watch and to call. So number 3 for the Steel, certainly a player to watch for Chicago this weekend. But still kind of a balanced scoring attack, things like that. But yeah, unfortunately, the Mankato line is no more.
Well, of course, Jake Jaremko and Reggie Lutz both in the top 20 in the league in scoring, and we both know how much Jake Jaremko loves playing against the Youngstown Phantoms. Don't have his career numbers in front of me, but I think it includes at least 5 goals over the course of probably 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think if I remember right, the hat trick in Pittsburgh last year against the Phantoms, he's always put up some good numbers. Lots of, has had some luck as well. So, I just think of that Phantoms team as a team that can shut you down, though. So Jaremko's been able to find his openings, and he's been a player that, honestly, his production was a little bit slower mid-season, and it's really picked up as of late. He actually just he didn't get on the board Saturday night in Waterloo, but prior to that, he had goals in 4 straight games for the team. Over those 4 games, it was a total of 6 goals and 2 assists. So he was really coming on firing the last month or so, and hopefully that will continue on the Chicago side of things.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Do we know the status of Johnny Walker for Sunday's game?
I do not believe you will see him Sunday. I know the suspension situation is pending, but I would say that I haven't heard confirmation yet, but I don't think he'll be playing this weekend.
All right. Alice Steska has continued to do well in net for you guys all year, but Dayton Rasmussen was a nice acquisition as a backup for you. How has he looked so far?
Really good. I mean, it's a nice 1-2 punch for this team. Steska's had now a few different goalie partners here with the team this year, starting out with Tommy Napier, and then Tomei was here. Tomei just picked up the win against Chicago on Saturday with Waterloo, and now Rasmussen coming in. Obviously, he's a top prospect for the draft this year, the 6th-ranked North American goaltender. He's got pretty good size, quick reactions. I think he's fit in real well. I mean, he's only had, I think, 6 appearances so far, and there's been a little bit of streakiness there, like a shutout and a really good first period, and then, there was kind of a little bit of a collapse in Omaha a couple of weeks ago in the second period. But I think Rasmussen is the type of player that he comes in and he's a great complement to Stezka. It's kind of that 1-2 punch, especially busy weekends like this. 3 games in 2.5 days where you would expect to see both goaltenders between the pipes. He's somebody that can bring that healthy competition to Stezka. I think this team is very confident with either one of those two between the pipes on any given night.
You mentioned the busy weekend. Both of these teams are going to be getting back to Chicago in the wee hours of the morning on Sunday. Phantoms coming from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and the Steel coming from Des Moines, Iowa. Do you think we're going to see a couple of tired hockey teams on Sunday afternoon? Excuse me.
I think so. I think actually the Steel, I believe, are going to be staying in Iowa that night, so it's almost going to be kind of like a road game in some ways, because I think the typical show up to the rink 2 hours before the game time, I think that's going to kind of be the case for the Steel on Sunday. Where the Phantoms might be here, it might seem more like a road game to Chicago than Youngstown in that aspect. But I expect it's going to be a battle, and I think that's been kind of the Achilles heel a little bit for the Steel this season is a very talented, well-balanced team, but there have been some games where they have not been able to put together a 60-minute effort, and that can be a challenge on Game 3 of a 3-3 weekend. And I was very impressed. The last time the Phantoms came to town, they came with a ton of energy. They hopped off the bus, and they just came out flying that Friday night and didn't really slow down much through the weekend. So, that's a huge game on Sunday. And to be honest, the Steel don't have many Eastern Conference games down the stretch. We've got a lot of these Western games on the schedule right now. A big game like that, the team's got to be focused on putting together a 60-minute effort and not allow the excuse of the travel or the busyness of the weekend to factor in.
Voice of the Chicago Steel, Rob Sanderson, thank you so much for joining us here on this week's episode of Inside the Glass.
Yeah, not a problem, Matt. Anytime. Thanks.
And you can catch Rob's call of Sunday afternoon's game on either Hockey TV or the Chicago Steel's MixLR station. We'll be sure to get a link out for you on Sunday afternoon. Thank you so much to our sponsor, Uncle Bob's Moving and Storage. And go ahead and click over to the next segment for this week's Alumni Report.